It's time to get metal with Mistborn. Alright, so here's Mistborn all set up for the solo game. You have your deck of cards here. You've got your medals, your level or your training set to 1. You've got the Lord Ruler set, actually this should be up here. Okay, so he's set at the top where X is 1. He's got his little deck. He starts at 48 hit points. All the missions are at 0, which is just your cubes here. And you've got the row of cards that you can buy or recruit on your turn. And then you've got the extra tokens and the big deck over here of cards that are going to be coming out. So the goal of the game is to try and defeat the Lord Ruler before either the time runs out, which is this deck running out. So if he ever plays that last card, and you haven't, you get that turn to defeat him. If not, you lose the game, or your character gets to 0 hit points and you start at 36. This is a deck building game. So what you're going to do on your turn, like most deck builders, you're going to draw from your deck. So you start with a deck of 10 cards. You're going to draw 5, and you're going to decide what to do with those cards. So for example, I've generated some coins, 3 coins, and then I've got 2 cards to decide what to do with those cards. What I would think about is just what they have to offer. So for example, this card here would allow me 2 damage and a coin, or this icon represents the missions, progressing on the missions. So if I wanted to, for example, let's say focus on buying a card, I could play those 3 for free, the funding cards for free. They just provide coins for you to recruit new cards. And then I could decide to burn, what the game calls burn, one of my medals. So I've got all of these medals available to me, and this is the crux of the game here, is deciding what to do with the medals. So I could decide to burn one of my medals to use the steel training. So if I did that, if you could look down here, that's going to give me 3 coins, a 4th coin for purchasing, and 2 combat. Or I could decide to use the tin training. Okay, so same thing, I would take my tin, now place it here to show that I'm burning it. So if you look on the track here, I don't know if I'm going to zoom in on it, or I could just bring this up. You could see that. But I could burn only 1 medal here at the beginning of the game. As I gain training, so any cards with this icon here, this kind of cloak, will move my training up 1. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of your turn, the first thing you're supposed to do is actually move this up 1, so I'd be here. But I still could only burn 1 medal. As I progress, though, if I get to here, every time I get to one of these icons, I can burn an additional medal. So if I was here, I could actually play both of these by burning that tin for that effect, and then I could also place another one here to use this effect. So the attack, as you might guess, the combat as they call it, is to damage adversaries that the Lord Ruler might have out there, or I could damage the Lord Ruler himself. Tracks, the reason why these are important, for one, they give you some benefits. As you move up the tracks, you'll get different benefits. This one here would let me burn cards or destroy cards from my deck. With any deck builder, you're going to want to do that. You get rid of your weaker cards as the game goes on. This one will give me combat for that turn. I can also, these here, this is just if you're playing the multiplayer games. You would just ignore that kind of effect. You would get both of these icons in the game, both of the effects here. But the reason why these are important is because the Lord Ruler, and we'll take a look at his cards as they come out, he will heal depending on how many of the missions are still active. So you're going to want to move those missions all the way up, at least 2 out of the 3, before you start damaging the Lord Ruler, because those cards, he'll heal 10 to every mission that you don't have completed. So that's pretty important early on in the game. Yet another option I have on my turn to play cards. Say I burn this bronze to play Pursue, and I had a decision to make between playing Tin Training or Strike. What I could do is actually burn the metals on the Strike card to play Tin Training. And what that would do is that would allow me to use the ability here, the 2 mission on the tracks here. And also, if you can see this little icon here, that's called the Savant ability of the card, is I could still use that icon as well. So not only do the cards allow you to play their abilities in the bottom section, but you can also use the cards to help power other cards as another way to deck build and strategize with using your metals. So there's a lot of decision space there and what cards to get. Do you want to focus on just a few colors, or do you want to spread around and grab different colored cards? Something else you could do on your turn with your metals is called flaring. So let's say I played my fundings. I want to play this zinc training. I'd spend my zinc metal, okay? But let's say I also wanted to play copper training. What you can do is you could flare. So I would take my copper training, flip it over, and now I can play that. However, at the end of my turn, after I do what I do with those cards, I place these back, and that stays flipped over because now I can't use that until I refresh it. So it's a tactical decision I have to make. I may really need something in a situation where I want to burn a few more metals and I can't, so I decide to do that. As the game goes on a future turn, if that is still flared, I could actually spend a card matching the color. Oh, let's see. I could spend a card matching that color, discarding it, not using any of its abilities to refresh one of those metals. So let's say I did that. I went up on my tracks. I'm going to spend my 3 coins to look over here in the offer and gain a new card. So let's say I take this card here, Pursue. I would add it to my discard pile. And now I've spent all of my icons. I put my metal back up, all the cards back up, and then I would draw a new hand for the new round. Now that is basically my turn. I would slide these down, flip over a card. Okay, I've got my new hand for the new turn. For the Lord Ruler, all we do is we're going to flip over a card and we're going to do as it says. In this case, it is one of his adversaries. So what I would do here is I would add that to in front of me in the play area. Now I wanted to fit everything on screen. Typically what I would do is something like this, where this is a little lower than I would have the adversaries build up here. Or you could put them over in the play area of the Lord Ruler himself. But I like to have them right in front of me so you could see that they're going to be coming after you. So let's take a closer look at the Lord Ruler and how his turn works. So it's really simple. You're just going to draw a card and do as it says. You're going to have 2 different kinds of cards. You're either going to have adversaries, which are going to attack and will attack you on your turn, and you also have these edict cards. So the adversary, they have a couple of stats on here. You've got just a little ability and some attacks that they may do. Whenever you see an X, you just refer to the current dominance on the Lord Ruler's card, and that'll move as the game goes on. We'll get to that in a second. So these just stay in front of your character, or you could have them off to the side here. And just remember to refer to them. They might have something that triggers at the beginning or the end of your turn, and they'll attack you. On your turn, you're going to want to knock these guys out by spending combat and covering each of these different numbers here as you progress through. You could choose either or any of these. When you cover up each of the slots here, then that adversary is defeated and you put them off to the side there. If you do get an edict card, what you do is you just take a look at the information up top. So first off, it's going to move up 2 here. So I would slide this down 2. I would do this effect on this card here. So as you can see, as I reveal that, says each player flares a medal, if that'll focus. Each player flares a medal or takes 3 damage. Okay, so you'd have to make a decision there and do that, and then you come back over here. And if you're playing 1 or 2 players, of course we're playing 1, it'll move up a 3rd time. Now X is 2, and each player takes 4 damage. And then I would finish doing what's here. All players will heal 2, and the Lord Ruler heals 10 for each uncompleted mission. So this is, again, why completing those missions are important. You don't want to hit him, and this is a pretty obvious thing. You're not going to want to hit him until you complete at least 2 of the missions throughout the game. And so as he progresses, he's going to get harder the longer you take. Of course, that's going to get you closer to ending the game as you move through this stack. But this card can even flip if it takes too long. And now the allies are getting stronger, and the effects and attacks that he's doing on these cards are going to get even worse as the game goes on. Okay, so another thing I wanted to show is just a zoomed in view of some of the cards. So you have these different cards. Of course, you've got the cost in the top right corner, and you've got just the different abilities. So this one will let you move 3 on the mission and draw a card. If you can burn 2 of the required metal, so in this case 10, you could actually get all of the effects down here. You have here where you can burn 2 to get 3 coins. Here's a 4th coin and draw a card. Here's one that will allow you to get training, and also soothe 1, which is eliminate that many cards. And also if you use it to power another card, you're going to get training from that either way. You'll get 2 combat out of this card, or you can you have this special ability here which is called pull. And then here's another cool card that just allows you, if you burn copper, you can use all of these. You'll get 1 of each of the icons, and if you can burn 3 copper, you'll have your choice of any of these really powerful abilities here. Of course, that's a really expensive card, but as you can see, really powerful. You have different kinds of allies which do attacks. So you can see here, we haven't talked about adium yet. In a second, well, we're going to get there. You can attack for 4, and if you can burn a second adium, that's a total of 8 attack. Here's a character who will allow you to burn another metal just as it's sitting out there, and it has 2 defense. So the really nice thing about allies, which is a really important part of the game, is that they have this defense value which they can use to block attacks from adversaries or the Lord Ruler himself, in which case they'll get knocked out and just be placed into your discard pile. And here's another one with an example of where if you are burning, so you can just straight up burn 1 of your metals, even if you're not using a card. But if you are burning a card or burning a metal to use a card, this ability here activates. And if you're also burning a second one, then that second one would trigger, as well as it sitting out there and defending you. So allies are a really important part of the game. Speaking of adium, so there are a couple ways to get it. As you move up on your training, when you move up to these sections here, you'll get 1 adium that you just have until you spend it, and you just place it in front of you. You'll get a second and a third here, and then anytime you progress past this part of your board, or that you would progress past here, you would gain an adium. There are also just a few cards, not a lot, but here's a couple of examples of really expensive cards, but very powerful. This one will give you 5 mission and 2 combat, and here's 4 and 4. They can also be used to activate other cards, and they are used, they're like a wild, where they can be used for any of your cards. And lastly, I have, this is such a cool part of the game. It's a cost 9 card called Confrontation, and it's a unique way of winning the game altogether. As I explained, you could defeat the Lord Ruler, or you could play enough adium on your turn. So if you've stored enough during the game, or if you have other ways of generating adium, you could, if you have this card, spend all of the adium and automatically win the game, which I think is such a cool mechanic if all else fails or if you plan for it. Now, it does have to come out into the row You have to be able to purchase it before he does anything to you. One thing I didn't mention was on their edicts was that the way that they get rid of cards in the row is that he's going to play these edicts and eliminate that first and last card of the row, and that's how the cards will cycle through as you play the game. All right, let's drill down into some of the details of the game. First thing is the components and production quality, and this is going to get a good score here. A couple of standout things. The cards are okay, pretty standard cards. The dual layer boards, I think, are a plus with this. It's an easy way to track your training and your medals. The only knock, and this very small knock, is just these tokens are pretty thin. I wish they were a little thicker in this version. I think there was another version. This could have been kickstarted. I'm not entirely sure where those tokens would have been a little better. But given the cost of the game, I think that's the trade-off is really good. Another thing is this insert. A lot of times I just throw that bad boy away. This is one of the very few games where they took the time to make an actual useful insert. And maybe I'll throw a picture on here. If not, just know that when you unpack the game and you get all the components in there, you can keep everything in the box, sort it out, even sleeve everything, and that all will fit with sleeves, and store it however you want to, whether you're going to store it horizontally or vertical, that it's going to all stay in the box. So it really well done. The art is really nice and it's evocative. I have not read the Mistborn books yet. I'm a big Brandon Sanderson fan. I've read a couple of his other series and I really love them. I have a few of the other games and it seems the same artist is involved, and I'll double check that as well. If you're a fan of the game, then you will love the art, as I think it represents, from what I do know, it represents a lot of the characters and the world building around it really, really well. With some of these bigger cards, the Canton of Orthodoxy, let's see, okay, and Timothée Chalamet. No, it's the Lord Ruler. All right, on to gameplay and mechanics. This is a pretty straightforward deck builder, but it is so chunky and rewarding as far as the amount of options you have on your turn. There are a lot of icons. There's different decisions that are coming into the cards that you gain, and then how to use those in your deck are really cool. As I mentioned, you can use your metals that are on your board. You can use your other cards to power them. You have adium that you'll get throughout the game. One thing I didn't mention and that I really love that sets this apart is a lot of other deck builders, when you have a certain amount of influence or coins that you want to buy cards, sometimes the cards you want comes out a little bit later, and just the timing of it all, because of the randomness of the deck, it doesn't always work out in your benefit. But one thing I did not mention is that every turn you could actually spend 2 of your extra coins on your turn to buy what's called a boxing. And these are coins that can be used in future turns. So as I mentioned with the confrontation card, if you're trying to save up for that, if you are uh, generating a lot of coins on your turn and you want to save up, you could actually spend 2 coins, save a boxing, and as the turns go, you can really store up and wait for that moment to really to buy that card. I really love that because it takes away a little bit of the randomness that comes with a deck building game where the cards are coming out at the wrong time and just not working out for you. There's a little more control there. In the solo game versus a multiplayer, in a multiplayer game, people are going to be buying those cards from the row. You're going to be buying the cards in the solo game, and then those edicts are coming out and burning cards. I've found that you really do churn through a lot of that deck. It's a pretty thick deck. I have it sleeved, but it's a pretty significant sized deck, and you are probably not going to go through the entire deck every game. So um, it's going to give you a lot of variety and change up um, as you play. Speaking of which, as far as replayability, that's a big deal to me because you want to get a lot out of your game, more than just a few plays, at least potentially. And This is decent on the replayability part. So a few things that are going to change. First off, the missions. It comes with quite a few. I don't know how many exactly here, but you're going to get, a good variety. You're only going to be using 3 games, so the combinations that you're going to be using out of this 3, 6, 7, 8, and those different combinations, and they will give you different things. They give you coins and discards, healing, training. So that's one aspect that's different. Um, and this is probably more so because of the books. It would have been nice to get a different, bad guy, I guess I should say. But maybe, again, I didn't read the book, so I don't know their other adversaries. It would be cool to get an expansion where they add a few that do different things. Same goes for this. I'm sure after a few plays, this will be memorized, and you're going to know that certain things are coming and can prepare for them a little bit more. So maybe another dominance card. There may be something out there that a fan has created to change that up. And the last thing that's worthy of note, which is probably why you're here, is the solo play. There's a few things that I really am going to key on every one of my reviews from here and in the future. One is the quickness of the the solo player if you are playing against one, and how simple it is, or how long does that take. I think those are two really important parts. And the third one actually is whether it's a beat your own score, which I really don't like. I'm not a big fan of that. Or if you're playing against an AI, if you're racing on a game that has a score or something like that. So this falls into hitting all of the categories in a great way. It's quick, so you draw a card, you do what it says, boom, it's back to your turn. And then it doesn't take away from the regular game. If you play this, which I have with my family, is a multiplayer game, it feels the same. Nothing's really changed. So you can tell that the designer kind of had that in mind. They wanted to have solo. They wanted to be in a way where you could play it competitively, which you can out of the box. But the solo game feels the same as the cooperative game, which is the third way to play. So overall, what I have to say about Mistborn, the deck building game, is that whether or not you're a fan of the books, if you've read the books or not, I'm sure if you have, this is a bonus. What I've found from the other games that I have of Brandon Sanderson, the Stormlight Archive and the Reckoners, they stay true to the books and they're fantastic games. This is no exception. I would definitely recommend for the solo player who wants to have even a starting deck building game. I think this is great for that, and it's going to get to your table really quick. It sets up in about 5 minutes. Get to the game. You have a really rewarding strategy every single time that you're trying to figure out. You really couldn't ask for more. The price point is really good. So this is going to get an 8 out of 10 for me. There's a couple of small things that could have been improved on, but still I would highly recommend Mistborn, the deck building game. Thank you for watching, guys. Comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, and I'll see you on the next video.